Spoon and Rice. You know, this is really, as I've said, the most authentic place to come for Filipino street food, Spoon and Rice.
Hello, ready na ba kayo?
Hi Kuya! Wala sa shop yung bag na gusto ni Mama. Kailangan ko ng tuwing.
Relax ka lang, may alam ako lugar, bigay ko sa address. Ayaw nga pala, kailangan ko nang ipadala yung pang-tuition mo.
The best ka talaga Kuya. Pero dapat sa road remit ha.
Siyempre si Kuya pa. Madiskarte yan eh.
Alam mo yan. Oh, ha? Ay, si Mama tumatawag.
Hi anak!
Ma, tawagan kita mamaya ha. Nagluluto kasi ako nilaga eh.
O huwag kakalimutan lagyan ng paminta ha.
Di ma, o sige na, tawagan kita mamaya. Ano, nabili mo na ba yung bag?
Oo Kuya, ako pa. Salamat sa pinadala mo. Malapit na ako sa bahay. Ma, bigay ni Kuya para sa'yo.
Happy birthday, ma!
Dali ma, galing sa amin lahat yan.
Yes, galing sa amin lahat yan.
Thank you! We miss you mga anak ko!
Hi guys, welcome everybody to another episode of Pusong Pinoy with Malcolm Conlan. It's a real honor and a privilege to be able to join you guys again. As many of you know, I spent some time in hospital recently, so I had to cancel last week's show on Sunday, but pretty much I'm getting there, and I still wanted to do this show, particularly as I wanted to pay tribute to everybody in the NHS in my own little way. I just wanted to thank my sponsors, World Remit. Thank you very much for joining us on this journey still and being with us. I'd also like to thank Comfort Healthcare. I'd like to thank Spoon and Rice, and of course everybody who's made this journey possible, and of course my technical director Robbie, and everybody who's here with us. Today is an awesome episode. I'm so excited to be able to connect with you guys today, and the guests that I have are very close to my heart. As many of you know, that I'm a big supporter of Philippine nurses in the UK. I'm very, very grateful. I've been made the ambassador of goodwill for the Philippine Nurses Association, which is an honor very close to my heart. And of course, I'm always following other vloggers, if you like, on social media. So my guest today, and I'm really excited, is Manong George. And he's just a great advocate for Filipino nurses. So it's over to you. Hi, kumusta ka, George?
Hello, welcome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Malcolm, for having me here. Such a short notice. I mean, look at you, back and ready to go. Thank you very much for having me, and to all the viewers there, to Filipino nurses, members of PNA UK who are watching this right now. Yeah, thank you, and I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much. You know, it's been a difficult time. I know we originally scheduled to meet up last Sunday, and then, of course, there was a possibility of Wednesday as well. But again, I wasn't so much up to it because I got out of hospital on Tuesday. But here we are. I just wanted to say, you know, that I'm so grateful to all of the nurses and all of the staff and the doctors at the Princess Royal University Hospital in Orpington for taking care of me. As some of you may or may not know, I've had an agony pain in my left hip for probably about 2 months now. and it's kept me awake some nights, and I'd kind of thought it was the bed. So basically here I am lying on the bed, and I was in absolute agony. So I put a pillow there, a cushion there, and I'm okay, it's coming from my hip, so it's probably my hip. And then basically on Sunday, I woke up in absolute agony and I felt sick. And I'm like, hip, kidneys, call 999, I'm in pain. And then it suddenly dawned on me. But it's funny, until I actually felt that level of pain, that was almost like a trigger that, okay, this is my kidneys. I need to go to hospital. And it's funny, I've spent probably all my life not bothering drinking water, probably eating the wrong foods, probably neglecting my own health. And it's kind of come back to haunt me. So here I am with my bottle of water. But you know what, George, when I was in hospital, I pay such admiration and tribute to all of the nurses who looked after me from all nations, not only the Philippines. I had an amazing nurse from Nigeria who was coming to me every 20 minutes, making sure I was okay, giving me various things. Then there was another nurse from India who, again, was absolutely brilliant. Another nurse from the UK, a British nurse. And then, of course, I had 3 or 4 Philippine nurses. But I saw one particular nurse who was working so hard, this Filipino nurse. And literally she was going from patient to patient to patient. She was sweating because she had to work at such a pace. And of course, that's the pressure of the NHS. And for those nurses back home in the Philippines, it's not an easy ride coming here. If I'm honest, George, I don't really watch your vlogs. Can you tell me a little bit about the journey of an NHS nurse from the Philippines and maybe some of the challenges?
So, primarily for us Filipino nurses, just to put it out there, I've had a very different journey. Okay, our pathway more than 10 years ago was very different from what it is now. But in saying that, I wouldn't say that it's a lot easier now. There are multiple tests to take, primarily the English tests. The English test first, you have to achieve a certain band score before you're allowed. There's also the registration process itself can be a bit tedious. You have to communicate with the PRC, the regulatory commission in the country, and then other important documents that you need to prove. And then you have that test. The first test for the first nursing test would be what they call the CBT. It's a computer-based test. It's 100. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's 100-item test that they have to pass. And then, if that's all clear, all the visa processing is okay, a nurse would typically fly here in the UK to start as an entry. Maybe they might be at the band 3, band 2, depending on trust. And we're talking about the NHS. And then they would start to prepare for what they call the OSCE. That's the Objective Structured Clinical Examination. And that's what they'd have to pass to basically get the license to practice. So it's a lot of steps. And I think more or less the journey can be as quick as 6 months for some who are lucky, but then some people might take years as well for them to achieve that.
I know I'm right in thinking that the IELTS was incredibly difficult to pass, and I'm not going to talk about Brexit at all, but one of the reasons why I personally voted for Brexit is because I wanted a level playing field for all immigrants coming in from other countries, and I wanted them all to be subject to the same tests. And basically what was happening previously many years back, if I don't know if you know the history, but European nurses didn't have to take the IELTS, and yet Filipino nurses had to take the IELTS. And in fact, it was a level 7, which was incredibly hard to pass. So this then meant that it wasn't a level playing field. We all know that nurses in the Philippines are very, very well qualified, and I believe they have 4 years of study, and it's a very difficult journey. And of course, we also know that English is the business language of the Philippines.
That's
so
right.
Most of our nurses have a very good proficiency in English. Yes, of course, there's the regional variations, there's the slangs, there's the things that they need to learn. But I understand now it's been dropped to 6.5 and they can take the OSCE instead of the IELTS. Can you just tell me a little bit about that and your view of this?
So what has been changed for the IELTS in recent years from a band score of everything should be a 7 for each category of the IELTS. Where it has been particularly quite difficult was the writing bit. Because you have to write, because this is an academic IELTS. There's a technical writing, the academic writing, and then there's the more, what I'd say, not really creative, but more abstract writing, right? So you need to have a band score of 7 there as well. So that level has now been uh, reduced to 6.5, which is great. It has helped a lot of the nurses. Now the OSCE in itself, maybe the OSCE started around 4 or 5 years ago. Harking to what I mentioned earlier, previously we uh, to become a nurse registered in the UK, and if you're coming from overseas, it's more of there's a program you have to fulfill, and that's the overseas nursing program. You'd have to it might be completing a portfolio. That would be the most common pathway. Now there is a bit more structure to it, and that's the OSCE that was introduced. So OSCE is more of like I think if we have a lot more nurses who are watching at the minute, if you think they would understand this when I say it's more of a return demonstration of the skills
Yes.
of a nurse that is required. So yeah, it's been good. I mean, in some respects, yes, it might be a bit difficult, but I guess it also standardizes the care. So I think I can see also the benefit in having that done.
I think the thing is, I think it's more practical and appropriate, isn't it? It's
Mm.
almost like the life in the UK test. I'm a British citizen. I was born a British citizen, but I have to be honest. I tried to take the life in the UK test a few times with my wife just as a mock, and I failed on every single occasion. I'm not interested, with the greatest respect, in the history of 1740. I don't need to know it to be a British citizen, but somebody becoming a British citizen needs to know those things, and it's outside their comfort zone. You might be the world's best engineer, but you might not have any interest in history whatsoever. And I would equate the same to this test, to be honest. You may be great in speaking in English, but you might not be interested in written English. You might not be interested in literature. So actually making it more appropriate to the qualifications of nurses, I think, is a good step. And I think if the government wants to achieve their target of 50,000 nurses, I think they've had no choice. So in one way, you almost think it's just the NMC, but in the other way, you think it's the only way we can fill those positions. Not that we're lowering the standards. It's not about lowering the standards at all, because the nurses from the Philippines are highly proficient. It's just about making it on a level playing field so that it's more practical to the job they want to do. And I'm sure you agree.
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, like I said, this is not something to what do you call this, squeeze the living hell out of out of each nurse who wants to join us here in the UK, but it's actually to set that standard. And I think every nurse, any professional, could appreciate that. You'd want to have that set of standards still there to ensure that your profession is well maintained. So I guess it's just fair.
So it's been amazing talking to you. An exciting show this is. I'm really pleased to hear your opinion and maybe share my opinion as well. We're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, we're going to speak to April, who's our special guest today, a newly arrived nurse from the Philippines, which I'm really excited to talk to her as well. So we'll see you when we come back on Pusong Pinoy with Malcolm Conlan.
Sa World Remit, naiintindihan namin ang iyong paglalakbay. Na minsan, kailangan lumayo upang makamit ang tagumpay. With ways to save more, when you send more, World Remit is here for you, so you can be there for them.
Spoon and Rice. You know, this is really, as I've said, the most authentic place to come for Filipino street food, Spoon and Rice. Hi guys, welcome back everybody. Thanks so much for joining us at Pusong Pinoy with Malcolm Conlan. Once again, I'd like to thank World Remit. I'd like to thank Spoon and Rice, Comfort Healthcare, and everybody who's involved in this journey. You know, we're coming to the end of this journey in just a few weeks, and I'm really sad about that. But, you know, I think it's important to keep on reaching out to the Filipino community and supporting the Philippines and the Filipino community in any way I can. I've always had a passion for Philippine nurses, and I believe that the Philippines has so many incredibly talented people, and I'm so pleased now that we are seeing the return of Philippine nurses after a bit of a break, if you like. So my next guest, I'm very, very pleased to welcome April, who's joining us today. So hi, April. How are you doing?
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm okay. Okay lang. Kumusta ka?
Oh, that's nice. I was surprised. Thank you for having me here. I'm really nervous a bit because this is my first time to go on live. I had a few interviews, but not at this kind of platform. But anyway, thank you, and I hope you're feeling okay.
I'm good. I'm okay, and please don't be nervous. I'm nervous too. I'm always nervous because you know people are kind of watching you. But you know,
Yeah.
I think we've got some really interesting things to talk about, and I just wanted to know a little bit, if you don't mind, about your background, what made you become a nurse, and nursing in the Philippines.
Oh, I am a nurse. I've been a nurse since 2006, and really my passion is not nursing. It's at that time I really want to become an engineer, but it was the time that nursing was really in demand in the United States, in 2000, around 2004 2005. And so my grandmother asked me to, instead of pursuing my engineering course, they asked me to go on and take the nursing path, which after passing the exam and then getting a job, it feels like, no, I think this is really my passion. So I pursued on it, and then since 2006, I'm already working more on the children's side. Although I have a 5-year private nursing experience in the Middle East. And then after that, it's just more on the kids. I really love taking care of the kids. It feels like it's a fulfillment when you see children recover from life-threatening illnesses, especially the newborns, which is it's the reward you cannot get from anywhere else.
You know, that's completely right. You know, when I worked for an ambulance service for about 5 years, we went into the neonate unit. You know, we saw Great Ormond Street, and we see these, you know, when kids are sick, as you know, they go downhill very quickly. And of course, they can't talk sometimes. They're maybe too young to talk. So it's so precise, isn't it? And I know it's almost, you know, you can't have exact measurements of medicine for people who are so small. So maybe there's a lot more to sort of think about. And perhaps with your engineering background, it's a lot more in maths. I hope I'm right. A lot more of maths, a lot more of almost engineering to kind of get it right. And if that's your speciality, I can see why you're really good at that. And of course, you've got a really nice personality as well. And that really, really helps. So I really do admire the path that you've chosen.
Thank you. I never really thought that I will last for this long in nursing, because first and foremost, I'm very nervous taking care of. This is life that we're talking about. We're not talking about like inanimate objects that I can leave right there and then I will come back tomorrow. It's not like that. The thing with nursing is that when you are really if it's really your passion, I tried actually to I have told myself in 2018 that I don't want to be a nurse anymore. It went into a time that it was too much for me, and so I said, I don't want to be a nurse anymore. And so I went back to the Philippines from the Middle East, and then I rested for about half a year. And then while on a small business in the Philippines, I feel like I'm not having the kind of fulfillment that I want, and I already know what will give me that fulfillment. And then when I came back to nursing, to practicing in the Philippines, it was like, okay, this is really what I want. This is really what I want to become.
It's really nice that you do want to practice nursing in the Philippines and that you have done that, because you're right. Many people become a nurse in the Philippines, not necessarily because they want to become a nurse, because they want to do other things. Like you said, you wanted to be an engineer. Now, actually, the Philippines might have lost a fantastic engineer who might have invented the next amazing thing that would have helped the country. But of course, you pursued nursing as a route out of the country. What can you say about that? I think it's a little bit sad, but I'm very grateful that you are a nurse. But, I think that's the sad part of it.
I think the only thing that makes me sad about not pursuing engineering is that it's my father's dream. It was my father's dream for me to become an engineer. And since it was his dream, I think that it became also my dream. But then when I went into nursing, I feel like, no, this is really my passion. This is really where I belong.
Of course. And I think, I'm not going to go into politics, but I listened to a speech by the president, I believe about a year ago, when he was addressing the UN, and he was talking about one of the biggest problems facing the Philippines is the brain drain. You have these incredible nurses who are very highly skilled. They stay 2 years and then they're desperate to go abroad. So me personally, have a lot of great respect for the Philippine healthcare system. But to be honest, a lot of the billionaires in the Philippines, if they want an operation, they would maybe fly to Singapore or to India or whatsoever. And I suspect that's part of it, because you have these amazing people, but you don't have that many nurses who've been a nurse for 30 years or 40 years staying in the Philippines. Do you think that's the case? And how do you think the Philippines can address that? I know the answer, but I'd like to hear what your opinion is.
Well, practicing the profession in the Philippines, you really get to have what it's like to be in a private hospital. I did not work in a government hospital, but I do have lots of friends who were in the government hospital. I think the problem is that it's the system in the Philippines that causing this problem. We can have the equipments that we need, we can have the resources that we need, but if we improve the system, if we improve the kind of treatment that the nurses will have while working in the country, I don't think it will be an option for the Filipino nurses to go abroad. I think
yes. The thing is, what gets me is the tax in the Philippines, I believe, is set at 30%, and the tax over here in the UK is set at 25%. And we have an NHS, and I understand that you earn less in the Philippines. I understand all of the issues. I understand about the universal healthcare bill, about PhilHealth and everything else. But I think the vision now of the country is to have all Filipinos, including former Filipinos, paying into that health service. But of course, the argument is, and not to get too political, why would you pay for a service that there's allegations of corruption? You're paying loads of money for your PhilHealth contributions. And then on the other hand, at the moment, you have a lot of Filipinos who are desperate to reacquire their Filipino citizenship, although on December the 7th, that changes because you can go to the Philippines anyway. So it just makes me think, when you sign up to be a Filipino, you have certain responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is to contribute towards the healthcare service in the Philippines. What would you say about that?
For the very first time that I heard about the universal healthcare law, I'm already in agreement with them that we really need this kind of system. If you compare it with the United Kingdom, with the UK, you have mandatory contribution to improve the healthcare system of the UK, which is good. The problem is, I think the reason why the Filipino people doesn't like the idea is because of the issue of corruption in the Philippines. It's like, I will be giving some money to you to improve the healthcare, but it will not be placed in that particular area. So they feel like it's not going to help the country. It will just support the corruption in the Philippines, which is it's really bad. I don't feel happy saying that, because I really want the healthcare in the Philippines to improve, because honestly, it's really not easy to be abroad and away from your family. If I have if I'll be given the choice, if I'll work here or work in the Philippines with the same kind of healthcare system, I will definitely choose the Philippines.
So really, the Philippines needs an NHS. And of course, we have the national insurance contributions, and that goes towards the healthcare system. But obviously, you know, it still makes me really upset and almost sick that I was in a mall, I think Mall of Asia, a few years ago, and I had a glass of freshly squeezed orange, and that was 350 pesos. And the guy working there said, for your glass of orange, that's my daily pay. And then again, not mentioning about particular businesses, but there are people who are absolute billionaires in the Philippines. In fact, some of the top billionaires in the world on the Forbes rich list. And yet the people are not doing so well. Don't get me wrong. I believe there's been a lot of changes under this administration. I believe things are going in the right direction. And this is not meant to be a political discussion, but it makes me so sad and so angry, even when my own I'm not going to go to my family, but I know people who basically have ended up in intensive care, and you should make a decision on if the person can survive. But unfortunately, it's, can you afford another 200,000 pesos for another 2 days in intensive care, or should you switch the machine off? And that's absolutely heartbreaking in a country that's so forward thinking and developing in the Philippines. And I'm sure it breaks your heart just as much as it breaks my heart.
It's true. It's true. It feels like, for example, this top hospitals, the 5-star, 4-star hospitals, which should be paying lots of money, lots of salary with the nurses who give you 5-star quality service. They are not giving this much. Not because they cannot, but because they feel like it. This is how we feel about it. Since you will be working with a 5-star hospital, it feels like you are paying them, not they are paying you, which is really heartbreaking, because we are giving ourselves here. It's not that we want to work with you. It feels like, you understand what I mean, but yeah,
completely. It's almost like you would have to. I'm not going to mention one, and I know one of the hospitals you speak about is number 5th in the top 10 hospitals in the world, and I don't know how much they pay. But the fact is, it almost seems like for a new Filipino nurse, it's almost like a privilege to work in those hospitals. And I remember a few years back, I understand you had to actually pay to volunteer in a hospital. That's actually quite ridiculous.
That's true. It's still happening until this time. It's not as worse as 2006, 2007 when I started nursing. I was very fortunate that when I started nursing, I applied in a provincial hospital, which they need. So I was able to get a job and really paid. But most of my colleagues are like, no, they paid for the hospital they will be working for.
And that's awful. And they're not just working a few hours a day. They're working 12-hour shifts, and they're working incredibly hard. And with a lack of doctors and everything, they're taking on so much responsibility. You know, it's awesome talking to you. And I really just need to take a quick break right now. But when we come back, if it's okay, I'll talk to you a little bit further. And then we'll reintroduce George as well. But honestly, it's great talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We'll be back soon. Spoon and rice, this is really, as I've said, the most authentic place to come for Filipino street food. Spoon and rice.
Hello, ano? Ready na ba kayo?
Hi, Kuya! Wala sa shop yung bag na gusto ni Mama. Kailangan ko ng tulong.
Relax ka lang, may alam akong lugar, bigay ko sa address. Ayaw nga pala, kailangan ko nang ipadala yung pang-tuition mo.
The best ka talaga, Kuya. Pero dapat sa road remit ha.
Siyempre si Kuya pa. Madiskarte yan eh.
Alam mo yan. Oh, ha? Ay, si Mama tumatawag.
Hi, anak!
Ma, tawagan kita mamaya ha. Nagluluto kasi ako nilaga eh.
Huwag kakalimutan lagyan ng paminta, ha?
Di ma, o sige na, tawagan kita mamaya. Ano, nabili mo na ba yung bag?
Oo, Kuya. Ako pa. Salamat sa pinadala mo. Malapit na ako sa bahay. Ma, bigay ni Kuya para sa'yo.
Happy birthday, ma!
Dali ma, galing sa amin lahat yan.
Yes, galing sa amin lahat yan.
Thank you. We miss you mga anak ko.
Appreciated it. I'd like to thank World Remit. I'd like to thank Comfort Healthcare, Spoon and Rice, and of course everyone who's been involved with this journey. It's been a really great episode today. I'm sorry I've got very, very deep, but I've taken this opportunity to speak to some incredibly knowledgeable people about an issue which is passionate to my heart and very close to my heart. And of course, that's the healthcare system in the Philippines. But George, maybe if I can go back to you, what can a nurse in the NHS coming from the Philippines, what can a nurse coming from the Philippines expect in their NHS journey? And I saw this nurse running around from patient to patient. What's it like? What's the reality of it?
Well, I think that's a very good question you've asked me, Malcolm. Because one thing I also have to mention to aspiring UK RNs or Filipino nurses who want to be nurses here in the UK, when you come here to the UK, it's not going to be all peaches and cream, or it's going to be a land of milk and honey. You come to the UK to work still. There is still that degree. And nursing, no matter what language you speak, no matter which country you land on, I think April can attest to that. Nursing is nursing. There's a degree of difficulty in that, because otherwise it won't be recognized as a profession. And so, harking into that, I just want to say to the Filipino nurses that they have to be ready. What I do as a vlogger and as a member of groups like the PNA UK and Filipino Unite is that we who have been here for a bit longer than our other kababayans coming in, they don't need to make those missteps that we've had. We want to make sure that when what we've the path that we've taken, we could lay it down for them to learn. You don't have to make mistakes to learn. You can learn from other people's mistakes, and that's what we do. So yeah, so expect something, expect work. Don't expect it's gonna be the queen. You'd meet the queen. It's highly unlikely. It's highly unlikely, I'd say.
And how do you feel about almost the dumbing down of qualifications? I hate to say this, but you have some very experienced nurses in the Philippines who have reached senior nurses, ward managers, midwives, whatever it may be. They've gone really, really far. And you even have some doctors in the Philippines who maybe come over here on a much lower grade, maybe as even a healthcare assistant, maybe as even a nurse. And yet you have so much to offer. I understand the reasons for that, but I still find it pretty sad that actually a very experienced Filipino nurse might have to kind of, I don't know, you might get a first year junior doctor kind of having a debate with them. And clearly the nurse probably knows much more than the first year junior doctor. How do you deal with that?
Well, how do I deal with it? Now, I think as nurses, we are trained to work uh, uh, in a multidisciplinary team. So, but as part of being a nurse as well is knowing to how to communicate. Although maybe as a nurse I might be a bit more experienced, but it doesn't even matter to whoever I'm talking to sometimes. So we can't pull up that rank. Now that with what you said, sometimes we have to. You use the term of dumbing down. I wouldn't say. I would say that it's more of like. Anyway, when you transfer here in the UK, your experience is gold, but the qualifications are different, so we have to respect that. But if your experience really is there, it will speak for itself. As you probably know, the old adage, experience is the best teacher, and it will just show with nursing. Nursing is not something that you graduate and you pick up on, and then you're a great nurse. It takes time. And I think that's what shows us Filipino nurses, because harking back to what you said earlier, most of the nurses that come in the UK, very few would be inexperienced. Most of them would have at least 1 to 2 years of experience before they would really take that courage to go and work abroad. And by that 1 to 2 experience, it can be something of a gold mine. What's the things that you could never really learn in school? We would learn that through experience, and that's just nursing, I say.
Completely right. April, just over to you again. What really saddens me, and I fully understand the reasons for it, is that there are so many Filipino nurses in the Philippines who work in call centers, answering the phone for Uber, for Amazon, for EE, for many other brands. Isn't that sad? Why is that? Can you tell me a little bit about the challenges of pursuing a life of nursing in the Philippines?
Primarily, I think it's because of the salary. There are a lot of nurses who have families who have to tend to to the needs of their families, and the salary in the Philippines of a nurse in a hospital will not suffice. So the best thing that they can do is look for a job still connected to nursing, because there are call centers who are offering nursing jobs, and then get paid better. I think that's the main reason why they go into a non-hospital based nursing practice or a call center practice. There are other industries as well who pays better, and that is the main reason why they divert from the hospital settings.
I fully understand it, but it does seem like a shame to me that actually you train so long as a nurse, you work so hard, you start off in a hospital, you move to a call center, you come abroad. I understand fully the reasons, but I hope and pray that one day Philippine nurses can be paid better for what they do. I understand this is a long journey. I understand that hospitals want to make money as well in terms of the private sector, but I really think as the president previously said, there's this massive brain drain from the Philippines, particularly during the pandemic. And I do understand there was a ban on healthcare workers going abroad because of this brain drain. But then, of course, if you're going to get paid £2 a day to work in the Philippines as a nurse, you might not want to do that either and risk your life. I'm not going to get too controversial, but can you tell me a little bit about those issues? Maybe both George and April.
Well, Honestly, I have before coming in here and they have the deployment ban. It was frustrating because I have a family. I have a son and I have a mom and dad who doesn't have work, and they only have like a small business that will not suffice for the way they live. So it's really frustrating that being the eldest born in the family, I want to help them. I want to provide a good education for my son, and placing the healthcare deployment ban in the Philippines did not really help. And then so when they did that, I really applied to volunteer for the COVID facilities in the Philippines, and then they said that we will be paid for a 500 a day hazard pay, which is really hurtful because here is a big risk and here is a thing that might kill you, and then the government is going to pay you for 500 a day. That's like saying that this is the cost of your life, 500 a day. It's really hurtful, but thinking that the Philippines need more nurses, I really did apply. Although my family are really how do I say, they 100% oppose it. It's like, it's not worth it. Don't do it. And that's the main reason why I did not pursue it.
Do you think it was the terminology that was used and maybe the amounts of money? Because realistically, if Philippine nurses were paid better in the Philippines, but I don't think that's just the government's responsibility. I think that's the responsibility of the private sector. I think that's the responsibility of taxpayers in the Philippines to pay the right tax. I think that's the responsibility of OFWs. And I think clearly if the Philippines needed those very specialist nurses to deal with the COVID pandemic. And, you can't get away from that. I understand the fact that because there's COVID in the Philippines, doesn't make any sense to me that all the nurses jump ship and leave the Philippines, leaving the Philippines exposed when there's such a massive rate of infections of COVID. So I do personally understand the sentiments, but then again, in the NHS, you don't get any hazard pay if you work during COVID. Your salary is exactly the same pre-pandemic or during the pandemic. Maybe George, you could add a little bit to that.
Yeah. So just picking up on what April has mentioned, I think one thing that I know it's something of a little bits of everything that has compounded the problem. Who would have nurses nowadays have more attraction and more attention because of COVID, right? But take that COVID away, what happens in the Philippines is the society as a whole doesn't really give us that much of a respect. Because as you can see, how much would you have to pay to study to become a nurse, and then what would that translate into a salary? You might as well just be doing deliveries for Uber or whatever, doing a driving job, because that's just how much they would pay you. So you see, it doesn't align there. And I think I have to be honest. Yes, now that this has been picked up during, unfortunately, at the time of COVID, maybe the government now is doing more things now to hear us more. I know you could argue some might not be happy with the healthcare workers ban that may have happened. Yes, nobody, but I would say nobody is perfect. But then again, now at least something is being heard and something is being done, and that's what you need. You need the dialogue and then the step forward. Because if nobody if nobody would listen, then nothing will happen. This will just perpetuate on and on and on. Because as you probably also know, the question is not just for Filipino nurses coming to the UK. The Filipino nurses, apparently, we provide at least 25% of the world's nurses. I, for myself, I work with so many colleagues back in the Philippines. I know somebody who's working in Russia, in Germany, in Denmark, and we're all over the place. So yes, so it's a challenge for us as a country to look at how much do we value our nurses, and if that can be picked up on and supported, then yes, there would be change.
So here's a question for you, George. You know the Universal Healthcare Bill. I understand that there was a percentage that needs to be paid per year towards your healthcare contribution. Now, the way I see it, the only way the Philippines can move towards the NHS or a national health service is for Filipinos to pay more towards their healthcare service. But there have been many objections, and this is what gets me. And I hate to say this, but on the one hand, as I said, you have Filipinos who want to be dual citizens, they want to claim their Filipino nationality again, but on the other hand, they're not happy about paying that £1,000 a year contribution towards the healthcare service. What other suggestions do you have? Because really, things need to change.
Well, I have to admit I'm no politician, I'm no taxman to understand how it could work. But clearly, to me, one thing that has, as a Filipino myself, one thing that I've known that has been ripe since I was there and since living here, corruption is still there. I think if we could take off half of the corruption and put that in the pot for the health services, there would be a big, massive change. That doesn't need science. That doesn't need rocket science. The two intelligent people to figure that out. It's happening right now. We've seen. I don't want to name names. We've seen politicians coming out of nowhere. Suddenly, they could afford 1 billion pesos for their campaign. But then, what do they do for a living? How can that be afforded? It's just crazy. So, if you look at it, cut down the corruption, then maybe yes, then some put that into not just healthcare but education, and that could make the Philippines a much better place.
I agree with you. I went back home to the Philippines probably about 13, 14 years ago. It was one of my first trip back home. And I understand that a young child passed away because they couldn't afford to see a doctor. It really sickens me, I've got to be honest, that in a country that's so developing as the Philippines, because the Philippines is developing, the Philippines is going in the right direction, and things have improved. Of course, they've improved over the years, but I think access to healthcare is an absolute must. And I think if you look at maybe the facilities that maybe St. Luke's has compared to, say, a provincial hospital, I know the government's doing their best, and I support the government in their initiatives, but I really think that maybe you need OFWs who are nurses to maybe return back to the Philippines. Maybe something needs to be done, but I do think it's sad that actually people as kids in the Philippines, they want to be a nurse. As soon as they've qualified, they then leave the Philippines without this expert skill. April, I'm sure you want change as well in the future.
Yes, definitely. We want to change that kind of mindset in the Philippines. But for it to be done, there really has to have a change. And I think primarily with the system of the healthcare in the Philippines, and yes, definitely take away the corruption, which is I'm really not 100% that it will be taken away 100%, but at least remove all the corruption, especially now if you might have heard about some agency issues, some agency scandal, if you will look at that way, that in the healthcare system there had been funds that had been taken and pocketed, which is really bad. It really saddens us, and it will crush the healthcare system, and it is crushing the healthcare system of the Philippines. But yes, for some things to change, you have to change the mentality of the politicians, and then the mindset of the OFWs in sharing, in giving their contribution for us to achieve that NHS.
Completely right. And I do think we're going in the right direction. But I just wanted to say one more thing about the NHS. I've been in hospitals where people are shouting at nurses. I've been in hospitals where I've heard that a Filipino nurse has actually been kicked in the stomach because somebody thought she was Chinese. They're being sworn at and everything else. And if you compare the fact that the NHS is free at source, regardless of your ability to pay, to the Philippines, where people have to pay 50,000 pesos for a CT scan. You know, when I was in hospital, I had a CT scan. It didn't cost me a bean. Don't get me wrong. I've been paying my taxes for 30 years. But I do think we in the UK need to appreciate the fantastic work that the NHS does. This amazing team of people who give so much dedication, but even more so for nurses from other countries, because of course you're here in the UK, but your family are in the Philippines. And right now, April, my good friend Tim Murray made this very, very good point that because of COVID restrictions, because of everything else, you know, you're 7,000 miles away from your family, and yet you're still working incredibly hard for us. How do you deal with that? How much of a challenge is that for you?
Honestly, it's not a challenge at all, because nursing, as I've told you, nursing is my passion, and wherever I go, if I am practicing nursing, it's not a job. It's a privilege working as a nurse anywhere in the world. So it's really not a challenge. It's more like, yes, I do miss my family, but since I am happy with what I'm doing, I can do something else for me, for them to come. I can bring them in here if I want to. So that will really not that's not, I don't know, that's not a problem for me. It might be a problem for somebody else, but it's not for me.
That's amazing to hear, and I'd really like to thank you. I'd like to pay tribute to you. I'd like to thank you, of course, for coming onto the show. George, do you have any sort of final words about maybe the difference between the NHS? Maybe I believe we should all be more grateful, but if you compare it to people dying in the Philippines because they can't afford to pay for medical treatment, and here people, perhaps some people, are maybe a little bit ungrateful for what they have. How would you say that? I understand about people's health issues. I understand if maybe people are depressed and have got mental health issues. I understand that. You know, when I was in the ambulance service, people swear at me all day long. I don't mind. I'm still going to do my job. I'm still going to give that care. But do you understand this is kind of a bit of an issue?
Yes, I guess. Well, you know what they say, you don't really know what you have until it's gone. And I just pray that we don't get to that point, that the NHS is gone, and then that's when all of British society just realized what a jewel they had. You know, I mean, yes, the NHS is not perfect by any means, you know, but the NHS is something that would save your life. It's simple as that. Now, I guess you look at countries not just in the Philippines, but maybe you could look into countries that you would have a different healthcare system, maybe like America, wherein you'd have to pay to get, you know, it might be an insurance system, but still that has to come out of your pocket straight away on point of contact. That's different. You get to, like, in the Philippines and in the States, how much does it cost to call an ambulance? There is a cost to that. Here, people prank to call ambulances. You know, that's so. I mean, what I'm trying to say here is that I'm not putting myself in a pedestal and saying I'm good because I'm a nurse and I used to work for the NHS. But no, but the NHS is great because for what it is, you know, it saves lives, and it doesn't ask you to return something back because they know you've done your part. And that's something that we should celebrate being here in the UK, and we should value it because it is the best thing that they could have here in the UK.
Completely right. Manong George, can I just ask you very quickly to maybe greet your family, to maybe encourage people what life's like over here, to maybe speak in your native language, if you would, to greet our viewers, please?
Okay. So, first of all, maraming salamat kay kaibigang Malcolm, ano, for giving us a chance to guest dito sa kanyang napakagandang show. And I just want to say to all the aspiring Filipino nurses there in the Philippines, or even yung mga aspiring dito sa UK or kararating lang na nurse, and ako po kasama ng mga kaibigan ko sa Filipino Unite, sa Philippine Nurses Association UK, ay nandito para tulungan kayo. Alam ko po, hindi po yan madali para makarating dito, subalit di po tulad ng dati, ngayon po marami na pong tulong. Andito po kaming lahat para sa inyo. Madali na po yan, nasa social media kami. You can even run it by Malcolm kasi we've got good connections naman po. So kung kailangan niyo po ng tulong, meron kayong mga tanong, nandito lang po kami. Salamat po.
Maraming salamat. And of course, over to yourself, April. Can you maybe greet your family, your friends, and maybe also speak to us in your native language?
Thank you for guesting me here. This is really an honor, and I am so happy to meet you, Malcolm. I really feel nervous earlier, but as it goes on, it feels like more of a conversation and not an interview. But thank you um, for for letting me into your very nice channel. I Babatiin ko lang yung family ko nasa Pilipinas sa Batangas. Hi! I hope you're all watching. I know you're sleeping, but I did not tell them that I will be here. They will be watching this tomorrow. And I would also like to shout out my friends who's here. Len, Mark, Joshua, I promised them. Len, Mark, Joshua, and Teen, who came in with me to the UK. And I would also like to give a shout out to to my trust here in Birmingham. I will not mention it. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to, but I will not mention it. I would like to give a shout out for the kind of treatment, the respect, the support that you give to international nurses like us. You don't know how much we appreciate you guys. This is the best. When I was asked, I told them that this is the best hospital that I've been with all the other hospitals that I've worked with. So thank you so much.
I can guess where you work. In fact, I've visited there to bring a few spinal patients there in the past. So I have visited probably even your ward, or at least your part of the hospital. Just going on to a few comments, if that's possible, before we finish. Some trusts are paying 15 to 30% uplift for staff working extra shifts in red areas. I guess that means the COVID areas, and that's good to hear, because I was mistakenly under the illusion that nurses would get paid exactly the same pre-COVID or COVID. But I suppose the reality is that some nurses, I know maybe agency nurses, I've seen it myself, they might not even want to work if a ward is a COVID ward. So I suppose there's a financial incentive, but I think perhaps that's necessity rather than maybe choice. I don't know. Very quickly, George, before we move to the next comment, can you maybe talk about that?
Right. Yeah. Well, I guess this is something that I think it's per trust. Not all the trusts can afford it, because, as you know, some trusts would have budget issues. But I guess you could also argue that the trusts that may be able to offer this are those trusts that are severely affected, and I think it's justifiable. Nursing in itself has some hazard issues, especially at this time of COVID. So I guess it's high time as well that this happens. And my only wish is that it could happen across the board. I know it's not. It might be a big ask, but again, you have to ask for it to happen. So yes, kudos to those trusts to value their staff, and I think they would receive tenfold in the service that the staff can provide them. Definitely.
But the reality is nurses should be paid a lot more anyway, across the board. They should be paid a lot more even than politicians, because they're saving people's lives, and actually they are risking their life on a daily basis. And tragically, we've lost so many Filipino nurses and healthcare workers to COVID-19. And I think that has to be respected and appreciated. Tim Murray, maybe any Western government who recruits a Pinoy nurse should sponsor a replacement in the Philippines for a 4-year course. Tim, I absolutely love that idea. Tim is a nurse himself and a very good friend of mine. I think that is a fantastic idea. I'm sure, April, you would agree.
Yes, I will. I agree with that. Definitely, it will be a good foundation for the Filipino people who aspire to become a nurse. Because you know how expensive it gets to study nursing, and how hard it is. So having a sponsor to take the nursing education will be definitely a good idea.
Fantastic. We'll just read the other comments and then we'll probably finish. We're running over time. Jaro video stream. Can PH nurses take online courses before transferring to upgrade to UK standards? Go ahead, George.
Well, online courses. Well, I would say technically, when you apply to become a nurse in the UK, you are actually transferring your qualifications already. And by the fact that you're taking the test to qualify in the UK, you are already, in a sense, moving on to that pathway. There is no online courses that you can take to transfer it, but there is a website. It's the naric.org. To see if any of your units can be transferred into the UK system, only if you've got at least a master's degree or a PhD degree in nursing, I suppose. But to be honest, that would be very difficult. You'd have to still take that pathway of taking the English test, CBT, and then OSCE to be a UK RN.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments? Doesn't look like it. So again, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody watching. I found this fascinating. I'd like to say I am sorry if I've become a little bit political, but I think what I really want to do is just talk about the issues, and particularly the issues of back home in the Philippines and how I'd like to see it. I'm very, very grateful that I've had 3 operations in the last year, courtesy of the NHS. And, I know that have a family back home in the Philippines, I know if one of them becomes sick, we have to send money. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But the point is, I just want to see a day when, Philippine nurses in the UK don't have to send money back home to their families to get treatment. They're safe in the knowledge that there is a better healthcare system in the Philippines. I know we're going towards that direction as the Philippines starts to improve, and they're going in the right direction. But I hope that day comes soon, because I also hope there is a day that leaving the Philippines to become a nurse abroad is a choice and not a necessity. I really do hope that many more Philippine nurses can train in the Philippines and stay in the Philippines. Don't get me wrong, I'd love all of you over here, every single one of you, but that's just me being selfish. Thank you so much. Maraming salamat. Thank you so much for joining us again on Pusong Pinoy with Malcolm Conlan. Until next time, until next Sunday, thank you to my sponsors. Thank you to everybody involved. Thank you to Manong George. Thank you to April. Thank you for your time. Maraming salamat. A quick shout out to the Philippine Nurses Association and all the other organizations who are involved in this journey. And of course, thank you all to my dear friends and my family. And a shout out to everybody who's been part of this journey. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay Pilipinas.
Sa World Remit, naiintindihan namin ang iyong paglalakbay. Na minsan, kailangan lumayo upang makamit ang tagumpay. With ways to save more, when you send more, World Remit is here for you, so you can be there for them.
Spoon and rice, this is really, as I've said, the most authentic place to come for Filipino street food, spoon and rice.
And hello to all the viewers of Pusong Pinoy with Manong George.
Thank you for always supporting Fourth Impact, and please, you can download our new song, No More.
And all digital platforms.
Yes.
And you can follow us on all our social media accounts. Just type Fourth Impact and everything is verified. So, thank you. God bless everyone. Keep safe.
Hi, my name's Jane Walker. I'm the founder and the CEO of the Purple Community Fund. We work with some of the poorest children and families in the Philippines. We run an integrated service plan from education, health, nutrition, social intervention, livelihood workshops, right the way through to business startups. And our goal is really to see as many Filipino families as we possibly can help to have a better and more sustainable and safe life. I have this great pleasure of welcoming you to Pusong Pinoy with Malcolm Conlan. And I've known Malcolm for a very long time, and he has been a massive supporter of the Purple Community Fund. In fact, Malcolm's been a massive supporter of pretty much everything Filipino. His drive, his passion and his energy is just absolutely admirable. He is a voice for the Filipino community in Britain. He supports all up-and-coming bands and charities that are doing work in the Philippines, and I know you are going to really enjoy this show.
Hello, ano? Ready na ba kayo?
Hi, Kuya! Wala sa shop yung bag na gusto ni Mama. Kailangan ko ng tulong.
Relax ka lang, may alam akong lugar, bigay ko sa address. Ayaw nga pala, kailangan ko nang ipadala yung pang-tuition mo.
The best ka talaga, Kuya. Pero dapat sa road limit, ha?
Siyempre si Kuya pa. Madiskarte yan eh.
Alam mo yan. Oh, ha? Ay, si Mama tumatawag.
Hi, anak!
Ma, tawagan kita mamaya ha. Nagluluto kasi ako nilaga eh.
O huwag kakalimutan lagyan ng paminta, ha?
Di ma, o sige na, tawagan kita mamaya. Ano, nabili mo na ba yung bag?
Oo, Kuya. Ako pa. Salamat sa pinadala mo. Malapit na ako sa bahay. Ma, bigay ni Kuya para sa'yo.
Happy birthday, ma!
Dali ma, galing sa amin lahat yan.
Yes, galing sa amin lahat yan.
Thank you. We miss you mga anak ko.